Thanks, David. Can everybody hear me out there? Okay. So I'm going to introduce the panel, and they're just going to be available to take questions from you regarding tips and technology for biological products. To my left here is Gina Colfer. She is the key account manager for organics with Wilbur Ellis Company. And next is Michael Brownbridge, biological program manager for BioWorks. And then Chandler Bennett, he's the president and founder of Parabug. I think I'll give you each a couple of minutes just to kind of introduce yourselves, give your expertise so that people can ask you questions directly. And I heard a few phones going off, and I've done this in the past, so we have a sliding scale. The first phone donates $100 to my water ski boat fund. The second phone is $200, and so on and so forth. So you guys could share in some of that too if you'd like. So, Gina?
Great, well, thank you. My name's Gina Colfer. I work with Wilbur Ellis, and I've started as a pest control advisor in the Salinas Valley 35 years ago, and I've stayed in this area as a PCA, CCA, and pretty much boots on the ground. Started with an input company in the Castroville area, and have evolved to understand products and how they work, and started in the conventional space and really discovered that the biologicals and using softer chemistries and more integrated approach to pest management is really the way to go. It's how to do that. The 4 R's, right? Rate, timing, placement, source. Super important to know how to apply products properly. But my journey evolved. I worked with a very large organic grower for 15 years as their in-house compliance officer, managing compliance, ag order, CCOF certification, EFI, Global Gap, the gamut, and really wanted to have a broader impact on what we could do pushing organics and biologicals forward into the more mainstream space. And so Wilbur Ellis gave me this opportunity to bring us into the mainstream, into organics and alternative methods. And happy to be here today and answer any questions.
Thanks, Gina. Michael?
Michael Brownbridge. I'm a biological program manager at BioWorks. I've actually been involved in biological control for more than 30 years now. So I started very, very young, obviously. I was like 10 years old. So having said that, when I first started in BioControl, it was this oddity, this strange little thing that a few growers who were typically hippies, let's say it, I got it out there, thought it was really cool to go this alternative track. It's very heartening to see how we have evolved, changed and grown from an oddity to really, this is the future of farming across the board. So it's been a very gratifying journey for me. Right now, my role is to provide technical support to our product portfolio, but really I think more importantly is to provide support to growers to transition to integration of more biologicals into their production systems, looking at that integration not from a single product solution, but around an integrated plant health management solution. And that's where we come from, so I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Michael. Chandler?
I'm Chandler Bennett, president and founder of Parabug. Where to start? I guess I'll start where I came up with the idea. I came up with the idea while in a BioControls or IPM class at Cal Poly. I was kind of one of the drone careers just ticking off. Came to realize that BioControls are super light. You can pack a lot in a small area. And then basically just dived into playing, there's a little side project, prototyping and just having fun. Graduated, went into custom farming citrus, eventually moved up here to Salinas and started farming strawberries and vegetables. And that's where it really hit home that the power or this idea of how much it's needed in this industry between labor regulation, loss of chemistry, resistance to chemistry, slow rollout of chemistry, you name it. Initially, it was primarily for stimulants that I was designing it for, but since then, we've done it in a variety of crops, variety of different biocontrols. I can't think of a commercially weird biocontrol that we haven't applied through the parabug mechanism with success. That's parabug and me. So.
Thanks. So the way this is going to work, we have Richard here with a microphone. He'll run around, and if you guys have questions, feel free to ask these guys. You know kind of their background and where their expertise is. They'll be able to chime in and help you out, hopefully, with any of the issues you might be having or any of the questions you may have. So it looks like we were told 35 minutes, but I see this clock here is at just under 40, so ask lots of questions.
We do have one from the text so far. What are the top formulation needs to develop better biological products? How can chemical suppliers help?
Can you repeat that, Richard, please?
What are the top formulation needs to develop better biological products? How can chemical suppliers help?
I'll do my best at that one then. I think a lot of the, from a biopesticides perspective, I think formulations, chemistry is key. It's not good enough just to have a microbe which does something. You have to be able to deliver it to the plant in the right place. So we find that a lot of early formulations was like the last 5 minutes of a project. Oh, we'll just do that. And yet it is so important to product success from the perspective of coverage, maintaining the active ingredients, whatever they are, in a stable state, in storage, preparation, and then post-application. So I think formulation chemistry is an art and a science, and it's something we in the biopesticide sector need to pay really close attention to. There are some very good actives, let's say, but the formulations are pretty shoddy, and they could improve vastly if they had a good formulation method for that active ingredient. So I think there's a lot could be done. I could probably write a long list if anybody wants to talk. There's a couple of hours just conversation right there.
I have a question, and we'll jump in here to Carol. But from the perspective of application and technology, I know we've talked in the past about some pretty surprising and terrifying way that people are applying biologicals that may be kind of counterproductive. Can you share maybe some do not do this stories?
We've only got 37 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I guess I could address that coming from the application side of the business. So you are only as good as your application. And so knowing your placement and what your product is really going after. So again, it's you have the right amount of water. Do you have the right boom configuration? Are you doing a soil drench application, or are you doing a foliar application, or should it be going through the drip and not being applied foliarly at all? I think that's where we have consultants out there as CCAs and PCAs, and it's training the PCA or the person handling the products and recommending these products to these crops, the proper handling and use of them and application, because I think that's where we really fall short. We're just not getting the timing right, we're not getting the placement proper, and maybe we're not using the right adjuvant to really spread it out. And time of day when you apply, or you applying during the middle of the day and then it's just desiccated, dry, or should you be applying at night when you have more humidity? So that's where I think companies can do a better job at training the PCAs on how to handle them, but then the PCAs, I think, need to do a better job at communicating to their grower the products, what they do, and just really hammering home the different way we need to handle them. They're not just a synthetic chemistry that can, go on and cure all of our ailments all at one time. And well, there aren't very many synthetic chemistries that can even do that anymore. But with biologicals, they're targeted organisms, and we need to know better how to target those organisms.
I'll just add on to that. I think Gina's right on the money. Placement and timing to two of the most critical, because it's a shift of mindset from see a problem, cure it, which is the chemical approach, to prevent a problem, don't see it, which is more the biological approach. So getting to that across, and then method of application, it's quite scary, I would say, especially working over the past few years in cannabis to see what application equipment people have used, from good old paint sprayers, which are used for, it's like, oh, you've got an incredibly valuable crop here. Invest in good spray equipment, and that's one of the most important things, because coverage is critical to all the biopesticides, timing, placement, all those sorts of things. So I think there's a long way to go. Persuading people to invest in good application technology is absolutely key. It's no good just to bring a sprayer from the field and then expect it to work, say, in a greenhouse. It's a whole different approach.
I would add on compatibility and know-how compatibility is definitely missing, especially with the use of living organisms, specifically BioControls, and working with integrating sprays with those. There's quite a bit of research in greenhouses, but in the field, it's definitely lacking. And it's up to PCAs and reps of the biocontrol industry to basically fill that gap until research can catch up.
One of the big examples we see is, instead of synthetics, these biologicals are much larger. So Gina, you pointed out adjuvants. If you use a silicon-based surfactant, you can actually, rather than laying a minefield out there, you can push all those microbes off to the edge of the leaf where they're not even going to get ingested if it's one that needs to be ingested. And those contact points are not on the leaf, the drip edges and stuff. So as an example, that's one of the things that we see quite often is if something's not working and I have to go out into the field, it can be one of these surfactants that's just too good. So where'd Richard go?
Yeah, for manufacturers that offer both synthetic and biological product lines, how do they overcome the conflict of interest from a business perspective on keeping that biological portfolio moving forward without compromising their synthetic business?
I'd say they're complementary. They should be approached that way. There's not too often, I mean, historically it's been an either or. You either go biological or you go chemical, and that really is not true. I think there's opportunity to use synthetics together with biologicals. I agree with you that I think in some cases the lower of the chemistry, the quick fix, the better profit margin on behalf is going to, let's sell this rather than this. It's a tricky situation, but I think there's the sweet spot lies in the middle. I think there's opportunity for selling both with the right approach and good education on how to use synthetics together with biologicals. I think that's what we're trying to do as a manufacturer. We're trying to work directly with and educate distributors around use of products as part of an integrated program. Not use this, don't use this. It's you can use the two together and it gives you better results in the end, typically.
Don't you think distribution's coming to the table too, a little bit more asking those questions?
We get a lot of distributors asking for, we want to educate our sales force on your products, how to use them, how to integrate them. Absolutely, yeah. It's a key piece. They are our key customers in a way. If they're not educated, they don't know how to sell the product into the correct spot to the end user. So
dialogue is probably the number one thing I'd say for that, just making sure you're meeting up with the right people.
I hear a good bit of discussion on biopesticides, which is important. What about biostimulants? Have you done any work in that area, and what are you seeing with biostimulants?
Yes.
We're seeing a lot.
Yeah.
It's a big industry right now.
Can you be more?
I think we're in the same stage, my opinion is we're in the same stage as biopesticides were when I first started, because I was working at a university and I had no faith in biopesticides because there was just so much information out there, so many different entities coming at us. It was really hard to weed through those, especially with what we already had to do. And I think that's where biostimulants are now. There's just so many, and they don't need to be discounted because they're great products. There's some really good ones out there, but I think like Pam was saying, the technology hasn't caught up with some of what people are saying, and so it's going to be a future. It's projected to bring in a lot of revenue and a lot of interest there. So we've got to.
At the same time, it's sort of a dog's breakfast. Yeah. Everybody's got something different. Every fertilizer plant's got something different. There doesn't seem to be any logical way forward in all this confusion.
I think that's where research and development on the farm has to come in. And again, how Pam was saying, it doesn't do any good to do the small plots because we need to see how they respond in a bigger area, because it is this whole system. It's not just one thing that's going to change how the crop responds. It's this whole system. So I think we need to take these, you have that system and then you test these products within that system and how that crop responds. Because I think in the biostimulant space, there are so many things, but not all crops respond the same as a corn plant to this biostimulant as a soybean plant to that same biostimulant. So it's, you have to vet these products, I think, on our own and really see the research from the company and understand how to use the product and then test that product under those guidelines on your crop, on your soil, in your environmental conditions. Because I just don't see that they're all going to respond the same way in these different areas. And that's where, knowing what you're dealing with on a daily basis on your farm with these products. It's research.
I think sometimes as well, it's what are you looking for? Understanding what some of these materials can do, perhaps what they can't do, and looking for what type of plant response you're looking for and what type of plant response there is. I think Gina's right on the money. I mean, it will vary from crop to environment, from nutritional status to nutritional status. And if it's a great year and you fed the plant well, you add a biostimulant, you may see quote unquote nothing. A lot of them are there. They help the plant get through stress events better. They can help nutrient uptake when they're limiting. So I think we have to be careful how we assess them, how we look at them. But I think also as a potential user, understand what they perhaps can do, what they can't do, and what are you looking for to get, at the end of it all, what are you looking for that product to do for you?
A question for Chandler from the technology side of application. Obviously, Parabug is doing some pretty interesting stuff out in the field. We saw a demonstration of that yesterday on the tour. Could you talk about some of the different approaches to application of biologicals? What kind of biologicals are being applied by drone these days?
Yeah, so Parabug, we're able to apply just about every commercially reared biocontrol out there. Not simply due to the mechanism itself, the way we handle them. There are other methods mechanically that you can do it, but you have to be very cautious of how you're doing it, especially if you're putting mechanical energy against mechanical energy on the bugs. So I would say that just be mindful of that, on what mechanism you're using to put these out, and do testing. That's been a primary focus of Parabug is third-party research on efficacy and mortality data, to basically provide growers with that confidence in the application technique. Some other technology that we're working on is further improving on the mechanism. I mean, the core of it's going to always forever be there, but we're trying to make it better in other terms, more on the software side. So we're able to do variable rate, and the grower is able to go into our web app, create a map. The whole key to our web app was make it easy. Everything has to be easy, otherwise growers aren't going to adopt it. So they can go on there. It's very intuitive on how to make a prescription map, and our drone reads that and changes output accordingly as it's flying through the field. Another thing too that we're just released today, or made publicly known, is our new model, the T10, which is a new drone, which is going to make us even more efficacious. We were previously on the M600, which was a great model, but the T10 we have now radar for terrain following, so we were able to keep perfect height above the crop throughout the entire field. Has obstacle avoidance. The charge, it's amazing how quickly the battery technology has come. We're able to charge a battery in 10 minutes now versus half hour to an hour. So those sort of things.
Is that what we saw yesterday?
Yep, that's the T10. Yep.
So while he's walking over there, what do you have to do to be, I mean, not anybody can just get their drone they got for Christmas and do this, can they?
Yeah, so the application of BioControls, commercially you need to have, at least in the United States, have a Part 107 from the FAA. That limits you to 55 pounds though, so that's another reason why we're on the T10, not like a larger model, because we're right below that 55-pound limit. But in California, you additionally need to have a German pilot license or a crop tester license, essentially, because DPR considers what we're doing as controlled by aircraft. So you have to have that, and then your Part 107, and also insurance as well.
Question probably also added to and answered by your new technology, the new drone. Have you guys had any trials inside of greenhouses?
Inside of greenhouses? No, we have very limited experience or work in greenhouses, and that's mostly because of a GPS denied environment. I'm really hoping that the technology will catch up to where we can effectively fly in greenhouses. We do have a smaller model, but the economics, I don't know if it's quite there, given compared to putting it out by hand, because you're essentially going to have to fly that by hand in the greenhouse.
There have been trials done inside greenhouses using drones. There are a few legal issues, I should say, to get over, just because you've got a flying thing going inside the greenhouse. You can't do it when there are people around for obvious reasons. Do you have full control? Because it could be an accident waiting to happen. I know I live up in Canada, and one of the growers we work with there were really excited about using drones inside the greenhouse. Their insurance company denied them being able to do it because of the risks were too high for the insurance company. Or they could have done it, but their premiums would have gone up tenfold. And they said it didn't then make economic sense to go for use of a drone indoors, even though there were advantages to using drones indoors for obvious reasons, but the cost, not for the drone, but for the insurance, prohibited them.
Question over here.
Hi, just a quick question. Growers are often, talking about thousands of acres at a time. Does Parabug utilize a swarm drone approach at all, or are you simply having someone come out daily? What is the approach that you would recommend for those?
Great question. We get that asked all the time. So we're able to effectively do about an acre a minute. Now, our limiting factor again is batteries, but it's not uncommon for an operator, depending on crop, to do for example, 500 acres of almonds in a day, which has actually kind of changed the dynamic of the insect side of the BioControl world. they're not used to these large orders, and also like the timeliness. Growers are very prone to like, oh, I have a problem, I want it now. They're not used to what the insectaries would like, which is some lead time or forecast. But I guess I'm kind of diverging from the question here. But we don't utilize swarm right now, and that's due to FAA regulation, but we are working on KNET certification from the FAA, so we can do swarm.
Hi, I had a question in regards to limitations on biological control. I'm wondering what sort of farming practices or conditions on the farm that are limiting the success of biocontrol, and what do you guys propose to do to improve the success of biocontrol?
I would say it's the know-how with the PCAs. Pam had a great point. I think that's a major gap, is the tooling that TCAs and PCAs have. I would love to see that filled. There's so many times where I come across a PCA that just doesn't know how to handle biocontrols. They're used to chemicals. And really that goes back ultimately to the root cause of education. The universities aren't really providing the know-how of integrating biocontrols, or specifically insect biocontrols. So I would love to see that built up. And then on top of that, again, is research. Fortunately, we're losing a lot of extension. I'd love to see that bolstered, because that's been key for us, is this third-party extension, that middle man between grower and us, essentially integrating these things. But I don't know if you guys have any other.
I know, Michael, your BioWorks has got a great compatibility library there because these microorganisms, if you're putting on a fungus, sometimes a fungicide's not a good farming practice. And so BioWorks has invested quite a bit of time and effort into that.
Correct, yeah. We have, for all of our products, we look at compatibility with synthetic chemistries and biological chemistries, actually. So, biological chemistries. It's an oxymoron, I think, anyway. Synthetic chemistries and biologicals, because two biologicals don't necessarily always get on together. So, yeah, having that understanding of compatibility is critical. And just, fungicide is a great example. If you're using a fungus, should you use a fungicide? It turns out a lot of fungicides can be used together with biologicals quite okay, or it's a matter of timing. It's a separation of applications in time. You can still maintain compatibility and therefore integrate synthetics and biologicals together. And I think that understanding, again, I mentioned it earlier, it's not an either or. There are ways to use these materials together. That's not always intuitive in many cases, unfortunately. So I think that's an area we need to work. Education it's the whole timing again. Force this home, it's prevention. It's not see, cure. It's getting the preventative mindset, getting materials out early. Even if you don't see a pest or disease at particularly high levels, that's good. You want to keep it low. And that's a difficult mindset to change sometimes. Because, well, what if I don't have a problem? Yeah, but what if you do? But it's a difficult one, but it's a whole different mindset around use. I think that's education again. Understanding how to use the biopesticides to their best advantage in the field as well is something we need to know more about.
I think we've got 3 or 4 minutes left, so I think they reset the clock for you.
3:25.
All right. We got a text question here for Gina. How do you overcome difficult environmental conditions when applying bioinsecticides like Bavaria bassiana?
So our company in the Salinas Valley, we do applications only at night. So that's for wind speed, because we have really high winds. It gets dry in the afternoon. And with county regulations, we have to be really careful with wind speeds. So as a company, we do all of our applications at night. They start at 7 p.m. and finish at 7 a.m., just dependent on how many acres. So that helps. Bavaria bassiana is a really interesting one. It is it's a fungus, so how do you get it to survive for the long term? I've seen where Beauveria bassiana has been applied to the soil in wet soil, and it's helped with some root aphid that we had on some celeriac. So I think there are different applications that we could apply where it doesn't dry out and kills the fungus. So it's there again, it's the right application and the right timing, and do we have fog, do we not have fog? So I think that's a consideration with just air temperature, how hot it's going to be, and knowing if it's going to be able to survive or not.
I think for Bavaria as well, you've got to think like a pest, or think about where the pests are. And the majority of pests are on the underside of the leaf, which is protected. And I think there's a misconception sometimes as well between what are ambient conditions, temperature, relative humidity, versus those microclimate conditions on the leaf surface, which are very, very different. If you can, it gets down to targeting as well. You know, if you want sprays to target where the pests are. So you don't spray the top of the leaf and expect to get the pests underneath the leaf, at least with biologicals. So better placement, you get protection so you don't get the UV degradation. It's a better climate for Bavaria to survive and infect insects in that microclimate. And that I think is part of the challenge, is improving application techniques and technology to get better targeting of biopesticides like Bavaria to where the pests are.
All right. Well, Gina, Michael, Chandler, thanks. And Meister, thanks for putting this on. I think I learned something. I hope everybody else did. And you guys will be around for the duration to ask questions.
We're signing autographs after this and speaker fees, the whole thing.
I'm a little disappointed I didn't make any money for my people, but thanks for not having your phones on, guys.